Hello everyone. Well, this is a bit of a snap live on Facebook because I forgot to do the answers to all the questions on the weekend. We had a busy weekend doing bits and pieces, and then I forgot it yesterday because we were busy again, and then I thought, I never did the questions, so I'm going to quickly answer maybe 30 odd questions and try and give you some reasonable bits and pieces. The first one was Claudia wanted to know, please explain a little bit more about the different boat designs and how they're doing in different conditions. What will it mean for the rest of the race? Well, I could spend half an hour trying to explain everything there, but the short story is that generally speed is a factor of the waterline length. That's the amount of the measurement along the bottom of the boat where it sits in the water, okay? And the longer the waterline length, the faster the maximum theoretical speed is. Now, you can go surfing when the boat goes off and it doesn't matter, on the top of the water going fast. But these sorts of boats don't surf that often. They surge ahead and so on. So the waterline length is important. The other thing is that some boats have got a square transom, okay? They're just a flat line transom, like a Rustler 36 with the rudder on it. Other boats, like Tapio's boat, which is a Gear 36, it sits in the water and it's only a short waterline length, but you'll notice the stern of the boat extends right out across the back, okay? And then there's transoms up in the air a bit and a lot further back. And then the bow also angles like this as well. Now, what that means is, yes, the measured waterline length is short, but once the boat starts sailing, you'll see the water extend up the back of the boat and run off at the transom. So he gets a whole pile extra waterline length, just as soon as the boat starts moving. So it's can be faster than it appears with a boat with a short waterline length. You get a boat like Kirsten's, which has got one of the longest waterline lengths in the whole fleet, right? Also with parallel waterlines, so that when the boat's heeling, it's relatively straight. When the boat's heeling, there's no distortion on the way the lines and the way the hull meets the water, because when that happens, it makes the boat sort of round up and get sort of funny control as it heels down. Long parallel waterlines, the boat it can go sideways and get the power straight ahead, So there's lots of factors involved with the issue of potential boat speed. Also, a small boat like Nord's got, obviously it's not going to be as powerful as big. That's part of the reason he's tailing ending the fleet. I think that's the general principle. Now, what it means is also that certain conditions can favour a certain type of boat. Again, in Kirsten's case, it's a heavy boat, very heavy boat. It's a big boat, long waterline length, all that sort of stuff. A lot of boat in the water. So in light weather, it can be a negative. You have a lot more wetted surface area and a lot more weight to push. So it could be slow in light winds, like in some parts of the Atlantic. But certainly when she gets into the Southern Ocean, having that big, powerful boat with parallel water lines and a long water line is going to really make her life a lot easier. The same with Pat Lawless in the Saga 36, a big, volume, powerful boat, much bigger than a Rustler 36. And and Tapio's boat, just three boats that are a little bit different. He's long, skinny, narrow, low, big sail area, a lot of sail area relevant to the size of the boat. Potentially that's a runaway boat in the Southern Ocean as well. So you compare that again to the most common one, a Rustler, and you think, it's obviously different. It's a beamier boat, more to it. But yeah, all subtle little differences that can actually work against you or work for you. Biscay 36 is what I'd call an average boat. Okay, the same with the Tradewind 35, an average boat. May not be on paper as fast as a Rustler 36, for instance, but if you've got a good skipper and it's prepared well and it's light, then those issues can overcome it. So there's a lot involved. Anyway, as I say, that could go on forever, but I hope that little bit helped you. Next one's from Kerry. Are you going to do a live with Robin Davey? Robin didn't make it, of course. He didn't pass his medical, but he seems to be fighting fit now. It was obviously a huge disappointment for him. He'd been waiting 4 years to compete in this edition of the GGR, and to be let down at the end was a real letdown for him. But he's since had some medical treatments on that, and he's recovering really well, and he's pretty healthy, and I think you'll see him sail soon. But certainly it was unfortunate to miss out this edition. He sometimes comes here and helps us do commentary and so on, and I'm sure if he turns up here in Les Sables d'Olonne one day, we'll get him on live and do some bits. So we're in touch, and all the best to Robin. Another question from Stan. What happened to the Joshua class that was proposed for this race? Well, basically, we had 2 or 3 people that were interested. We didn't want to sell any boats until we finished the first prototype. That was held up because of COVID and a few other things. We put our other boat up for sale, and the budget from that was due to be used for completing that boat, because our other budgets were kept for the event. And effectively, when that happened, we found the boat was stolen, and we're still under that. But anyway, that's another story. So, but at the end of the day, it wasn't going to work for this edition. It all took too long to get boats together. We had a few people wanted them, and in hindsight now, it's all over. We thought for a while we might let some computer cut plans out so people could make their own, but I don't think it would work. So we've scrapped that whole idea of having a Joshua class, and it's that's the way it goes. You know, it was a great idea, but it didn't work, bottom line. Mike wants to know, am I sailing in GGR 26? Not unless Jean-Luc does. That's the short answer. Rufus, do GGR sailors really use their socks and underwear when they run out of coffee filters? Well, I doubt whether I don't think there's any coffee filters on board any of the boats. So maybe wrong, but you know, yeah, I don't think they're using their undies, but who knows? Vivek, I'm curious on how they spend night at sea. What do the sailors do, you know, when they sleep at night, and you know, how do they avoid collisions and so on? And in fact, the question leads into, you know, it must be dangerous when you're sleeping, and how do they sleep? Well, the reality is you get very tired and you want to go to sleep. So the first thing to do is make a risk assessment and decide when's it a good time to go to sleep. Usually daytime's a good time if you think there's a lot of shipping around. So, you know, because the ship might see you in the daytime rather than nighttime. So you don't usually go to sleep at night, you know, going over, crossing shipping lanes and things like that. But in the Southern Ocean, there's very few ships. There may be 1 or 2 ships transiting, or 2. There's actually, I think, about 2 or 3 ships transiting, you know, your particular area every day on average in the Southern Ocean. But the risks are very low for collisions. So you tend to sleep a bit more in the Southern Ocean, but you know, most guys would be getting up every hour, couple of hours, every couple of hours. I know I did. I had a 2-hourly routine that I'd always get up if I was asleep. Every 2 hours, I had a wind-up alarm, check around, everything's okay, have a drink, you know, write up the log and go straight back to sleep again. The key for single-handed sailing and sleeping is not to get too tired. If you get too tired, it's sort of like if you start from here at 0. If you get really tired, you get a little bit tired, you can have a sleep and you're back up again. It's easy. You go down and up again, it's pretty straightforward. But if you go down here, it takes you a really long time to get back up to where you're feeling normal again. So it's really risky to get too tired. You can't afford to do it. So it's a risk management thing. You have your AIS alarm there, you have radar detectors and so on. So, you know, I never really have a problem. I can sleep really well when I'm solo, as long as I'm confident in the boat, of course. And as long as you've done the appropriate risk assessment, so you just sleep when you're tired. Okay, the next one from Chris. If someone to have an electric sailboat with electric galley, would you allow them to have lithium batteries? And the short story is no. There's no lithium batteries allowed on board. It's AGM or gel batteries. And we don't allow electric engines on the boats because we have to have solar panels, and if you do that, we don't seal the propeller. If someone had an electric engine, lots of solar panels, then you get perpetual motion, sort of not right, but you can charge your batteries, use your motor, charge your batteries, use your motor. It doesn't work. So we require the traditional diesel engine on the boat, as was provided when the boat was first built, something similar. And there's a 2-hour time penalty for every litre of fuel used over 25 litres. So you get your first 25 for free. But we don't allow lithium batteries. You know, whether we do in the future, that's another story, but I don't think we will because it's a bit over the top for a 60s type event. Anyone know what happened to Alex Caruso's boat from the original 1968 GGR? I actually don't. In fact, he never got a lot of publicity. The story of that boat was amazing, where he had a multi-hull and with a rig on it, and he decided just weeks before the start to do the GGR, and he took the rigs off and he built the hull and deck in 6 weeks and then finished it off and got sick and had to pull out. But I actually don't know. I have his email address. I might send him an email and get back to you on that and ask him what happened to your boat. It'd be quite interesting. So, is Ayrton still intending to have his electrical problems fixed? Of course he is. He's trying to do it himself. He was looking at going to the Verdes. He decided not to. And the discussion of going to Cape Town or anywhere else hasn't come up. He's confident at this stage he can keep the boat moving. And even if he went dark ship with no electricity, he's got enough emergency power through the mobile solar panel to keep critical communications up to scratch and talk to us and keep the tracker going, things like that. He may be tempted to go around without other electricity. It's not unsafe, so we'll just have to see how that pans out. But the problem is damaged batteries. For some reason there was a short somewhere and it looks like a couple of cells in the batteries have gone. That's the issue. You can make power, but you can't store it anywhere. You put it in and it just goes out again. It's like a bit of a problem. Leon, what's the significance of the 500 nautical mile distance with Damian? Well, that was just a benchmark. We had a benchmark when he came around Finisterre, I think it was, where he was 550 miles away from the leader. Okay, and then at one point he got out to over 700 miles from the leader because they were stretching out. Now he's back down to like 400 miles from the leader, so it's just a benchmark figure. But now it's gone from 550 being down to 400. That was as close as he got, and so you can tell, whether he's actually making gains on the lead spot. My take on it is that he's still got a lot of work to do it. He's obviously an incredibly strong performance sailor. The Rustler's okay, but he's got his work cut out for him. When they get the other side and into the trades, Kirsten and Pat and Tapio and so on, they're going to get a break, and it's very hard to make up ground boat for boat when you're in the trades because everyone's got the same wind and they're all going at hull speed, so it'd be very hard for him to catch it. I'll be surprised if he's caught them by the time they get to Cape Town. There's a few issues there getting across the South Atlantic High. People can get bogged down. He's got another chance, but it's going to be hard work this next leg, but it's a long way to the finish, so stand by. Question from Matt. Did Gregor ever manage to track down and salvage his boat from the 2018 edition of the race? We tracked it down. The tracker went for a long time, but then it was lost and it's assumed it's now gone. He didn't actually get to the whiskey or salvage the boat, which was really unfortunate. Next one from Mark. Does Kirsten know you publish her text? Absolutely. In fact, I smile every time she sends one and says all okay. Because that's all she has to do. We use this one for a safety check to make sure we've got communications. When she's texting us, we know we can send a message to her. So entrants can do up to one tweet every 6 hours, okay? But they must send us one message a day so we know what's going on. And every week they have to send us a message on their YB3 texting unit, because the messages that you see as tweets come in as an SMS from their satellite phones, so we know all the comms are working. And it's good occasionally to find out what she's up to. We do the weekly calls on the phone, which is recorded, and we get a bit of an indication of how they're feeling. Some people want to talk more than others, and that's fine. We understand that. So, Jurgen, is the competitor given regular information about weather conditions and other competitors? No, not at all. The only time they get regular weather is when it's forecast over 35 to 40 knots. And that means there's a storm coming and so on. So we give them as much information as we can. They can then decide what they want to do with that. If it gets really serious, we'll give them some weather routing suggestions. In other words, we'll suggest to them they should go northeast, southwest, wherever for the next day or 2 days, head up here. And if we give them that advice, it's entirely up to them whether they take it or not. We're not telling them they have to go there. That's their choice. Next question. And so the weather information is up to them to get normal weather forecasts from ships or from their weather facts or from their radio. And I tell you, I'm still stunned that there's not a lot of entrants that are going for the WMO high seas weather forecasts, and some I know don't even know how to do it. It's really strange because all of the weather is issued as part of the GMDSS system by voice from various stations around the world, but some of it's just as easy to go with the flow. And I understand that too. I get it. I went solo across the Atlantic last year in a little boat, and I didn't worry about getting the weather. It was too complicated. So you just go like that, and you cope with what you get. The boats are good. So anyway, but it's kind of fun. What happens if the competitor makes a stop in port to fix his or her boat? Any penalty? If they stop in a port, if they go and actually moor alongside, then yes, they've stopped and they will be delegated to Chichester class, which is a one-stop circumnavigation. So that's the only penalty. If they go into an island somewhere and anchor somewhere, they can do whatever they want as long as no one helps them and they're not penalised. So they can stop and have a rest, as Elliot did in the Canaries, and it was fun for him. You know, he met a few people and had a bit of a chat, and then takes off again. You know, no one touched him, no one supported him. That's fine, no penalty at all. Mike says, what notice of race and route changes for 26? There'll be some potentially a lot of little changes for the notice of race, and no real route changes for 26. The reason for possible lots of little additions to the notice of race, we're having an interesting discussion at the moment on the aspects of trying to seek some exemptions for World Sailing Category O for the Golden Globe race. Now, a lot of people, this could be first news for you, because we can't physically make Category O because we're smaller boats, and most of the Category O rules are designed for big, fully crewed, round-the-world yacht races, okay? And so we're going to make a play on that to see if we can get legitimate exemptions and see if World Sailing wants to be inclusive instead of exclusive. We believe the OGR boats are quite safe as you can, because you mitigate all the risks and look at it very closely on how you make it as safe as you possibly can. But yes, they're different, but if we can get Category O in some sort of version, then we're going to try that, and so that'll require a lot of little additions to the notice of race, and let's see what happens. That'll all evolve over the next few months, so stand by for that. Vivek, why boat leading GGR Bernard Matessia 1968-69 isn't positioned at number 1? I'm not sure whether maybe he thinks it should because he's in the front. We could do that, but that's a bit confusing. The reason that track there is for Joshua to see how it was performing back in 1968, and we're celebrating Bernard Matessia's efforts and the 60th birthday of Joshua as well in this edition of the GGR. It's an amazing story, and it's sort of like a salute to him. You know, what an amazing guy and what an incredible story. So that's why he's there, and it's interesting that the boats are sort of slowly hunting him down, and it's fun watching his track because you can see what's happening in the usual weather, you know, with through the doldrums and the trades. So that's why Bernard's boat, Joshua, is there on the tracker. Tristan for the Q&A. Hi Don, how do I follow which time zones the skippers are in? I can follow the tracker knowing that their local time is. Thank you. Well, you've got to determine local time. Local time starts from Greenwich in the UK. Okay, that's the 0 meridian. And every 15 degrees of longitude around the Earth is 1 hour. So you can very simply look at their latitude, look at their longitude, okay, and you can determine what their time zone is. So when they're going, you know, north-south down the Atlantic, their local time's not changing much at all because they're running down a meridian, okay? But as soon as they get into the Southern Ocean and turn left, they're going to be roaring across the bottom of the world, across the parallels of latitude, and every 15 degrees they go is another hour. So you can quickly do a mental calculation. So just remember, 0 is noon at Greenwich, okay, if you say noon, and then you can count the degrees across and you can work out the local time. Also on the tracker, you've got a day-night button as well. You hit the button and it'll give you the day-night zone. It'll show you when they're in the dark and when they're in the light. So, okay, next one. I have a question about weather faxes since they've been around since 1930s. Around 1980, the more modern devices now in use were designed and all the while fitted with modern software devices, etc., etc. I suppose the GGR sailors all use modern versions. Is this not against the rules of the GGR, or do you consider this a necessary safety device rather than navigational aids? Well, you said it in your first statement that they were designed in the 30s. Okay, the concept of having a HF signal that goes squealing, and then it converts to a printed version, which is a weather map. Okay, so the technology was definitely around in the 60s. 68, but no one used it. You know, some of them didn't even have radios. You know, they didn't want it. But we see it as an opportunity to increase the safety for the boats, to get better weather forecasting, still within the concept of using an HF weather fax. Now, the models that most of them are using are from the 80s and early 90s. For the early Furuno ones, it's still an HF receiver, and it's just got a thermal paper printout. The information that comes from it will be local synoptic weather forecasts using isobars, right? And you'll get a real-time forecast, a 12-hour projection, a 24-hour, a 48-hour, and they can dial that up for any area that they happen to be in. They'll often also offer satellite photographs, like black and white cloud cover photograph, and so on, but the principle is that it's still the same. Interestingly, there's only been a few of the entrants that are getting regular maps, that they've got a good installation, good aerials and so on, but it may get closer, may get better in the southern hemisphere when they get around Cape Town and going across the bottom, because all of those weather faxes are actually still transmitted. It's part of the GMDSS system again, that's established by IMO and others, Solus and so on, for keeping mariners safe at sea. Fishing boats still use it. You can still buy a black box that you can plug into your radio and put it into your computer if you're allowed to, if you're not doing GGR, and your computer will give you perfect weather maps, through this little black box. So it's still used today. A lot of fishing boats use it, from third world nations, all that sort of thing as well. From Deborah, where do I call home? Wherever my computer is, that's home. But Jane and I have a place in China, okay, and we had a fantastic place in Tonga, but it all got wiped out in the big volcanic explosion, and we lost everything. We were the closest island to the volcano. Fortunately, we weren't on the island, or we wouldn't be here today. And it stunned us. It just wiped the island clean. There was nothing left at all. Everything gone. And so we've got a few other little plans, and we're thinking about another boat. We could build the boat, and we rent a place here, and we might buy another place later on in Australia as well. But anyway, we'll see. So at the moment, home is Le Sable d'Olonne. We have a fantastic place here. We've got 2 or 3 boats in the backyard, so that's cool. Next one, Tim. What happened to Rob and Davey? Oh, we've answered that. He didn't pass the medical, unfortunately. Jojo, what weather information are they allowed, and what does that look like? Okay, what they're allowed is only the WMO high seas weather forecast. So the whole of the world is separated into different regions and zones, and there is a standard forecast that's put out by the World Meteorological Office, and that's available now. You can get online on your computer and just go WMO weather forecast. You can pick a zone, you can read what the forecast is. That's read out by voice over radios, and it's sent out by digital over Navtex and things like that. And so they're meant to get on the radio and listen to the weather forecast, write it down. You're given the centres of pressure systems and the pressure gradients and stuff, and you can then draw up your own weather maps. This is what I used to do back in 1990 in the BOC Challenge. It's exactly what you did. You draw your own weather map. I had a weather fax too, but sometimes that wasn't working, and so that's what they can get. That's the only thing they're allowed to get. They can get that information from friends on shore with their HF radio, but they're not allowed to talk about windy weather, predict wind or anything, the computer weather or anything. It's all banned. It's only the high seas forecast. If they talk to an unassociated ship at sea, they can get anything they want. The captain of the ship can talk about what he's getting off the computer and give them all sorts of information, because that's what traditionally mariners did. So there's some funny little things there, but all the entrants know what's allowed and what's not allowed. They're not allowed to get on ham radio frequencies. They can't talk by ham radio and chat there, but it's all, they can talk to whoever they want on their marine HF single sideband radios. So from Wayne, is there any prize money? Yes, there's £5,000. There was £5,000 in 1968. There's £5,000 in 2018, and there's £5,000 in 2022, and that's provided by Boat Shed, one of our partners. So it's part of tradition, but people don't do it for the money, but it's still nice, Anyway, here's a question from Steve. I know you don't give too much away with the competitors in terms of information, your verbal communications with them. During the Lanzarote film drops, you were able to tell them individually where they were in the fleet. Is this information available to them via GGR at any other time? No, only when the film drops are there, because it's like they've called in 1968, they'd call in to pass over messages and find out what was happening in the world, all those sorts of things. So it's fair and legitimate that we can tell the entrants where they are in the fleet at that time. But up until that, if you saw the lives going through there, most of them had no idea where they were in the fleet. They had no idea at all. It was quite a shock to some of them. Anyway, so able to release to the competitors in terms of their performance. We can tell them what we want when they're in the film drops. And in the radio chats, they'll certainly talk to each other, and they'll give their positions across, and they can sort of work out where they are, but they don't talk to each other and the whole fleet. The radios aren't up for it or whatever. So next one from Anthimus. How do they visit Guy Debord's boat? Small island without security. Yeah, that was sad. Guy had his boat on the beach there. There's some certain fundamentals you do if you end up stranded on the beach, okay? And I'll tell you from past experience, not my experience, but I just know what happens. The first thing you do is you put your anchor down. If you don't put your anchor down, then the boat's salvage. And when it's salvage, it's a very grey area. If someone comes on your boat and takes something off, if you've walked away from your boat and it's abandoned, it's a very fine line, and I won't go into the legality of that, but you must put your anchor on the bottom. Unfortunately, Spirit didn't have the anchor on the rocks. But anyway, secondly, you usually get someone and pay them to sit on the beach and keep an eye on it. But that sadly didn't happen either. And yes, unfortunately, some people got on and they took quite a bit of gear, which was really sad. So it's unfortunate for Guy, but anyway, he's charging through it. He understands the reality of life, and he's looking forward to getting stuck into the repairs on the boat. Okay, next one from Frosty. Why do the sailors have to sail beyond Estanda dos Portuguese Island instead of go straight down to Cape Town? Well, that's explained. So often, in 1968, there was a lot going on with all the entrants stopping and trying to get messages across and so on. So there was stops in Canaries, in Trinidad, in Cape Town, in Hobart, in Dunedin, in New Zealand. They all did stops. Robin at anchor, he dropped the anchor, and he had friends come along and open up his letters and read him letters from a boat alongside simply because they weren't allowed to be given the letters. So it's replicating that, and from our perspective, we use it instead of we get letters from the entrants and we get their films, which we can put up, and they'll be up starting tomorrow. You'll see the first onboard footage from Kirsten coming up hopefully tomorrow. We're just sending the stuff down to their manager now. So that's how that works. Bernardo Tessio stopped twice in Cape Town. Oops, I just lost my... here we go, we're back again. Okay, so have you read this article about Susie Goodall? No, I haven't done that, but anyway, we have read it, but you'd be surprised if I told you our side of the story. I'll give you one example. I don't want to go there. We won't go there. But anyway, they didn't get a lot of their facts quite right. Now I've lost the... Oh, here we go. Okay, we're getting into it here. Oh, that might be the end. Oh, I think that's the end. That's the last one. I think I got through them all. So we're nearly through them all. Yep, I think that's all. Okay, so that was really good. What's happening now? We're it's the anniversary today. In fact, I'm about to put a really cool video up in a minute that Ada just did. It's the 1 month anniversary from the start of the race. So we've been out here for a month, and it's a lot of things going on. Everything's going pretty well, and I think we're out to Cape Town on the end of the month, and I'm hoping that we beat the first boats there. We should do. So that's that lot of questions and answers. We probably won't do any this weekend, but usually when things start happening, we'll be doing it once every week. In the Southern Ocean, we're usually busy. There's a lot to learn, and we can interact. So look forward to seeing you on the next one. Thank you. Goodbye.